Okay, good morning, everybody. I hope everybody can hear me okay, and that everyone's had a great weekend and you are looking forward to learning a thing or two about social media today. So those who don't know me, my name is Fleur, and I head up the social media and marketing team here at Shortcuts. So I'm here to share everything I know about social media with you today, just so you can start to really make it work for your business. So before we get started, I've just got a little bit of housekeeping I wanted to cover off on. So this webinar will run for about half an hour, and I apologize in advance if I waffle on a bit because I do tend to get a bit excited about this stuff. My mic is on, but all of you guys are muted, so I won't actually be able to hear you if you're speaking. So save your questions to the end and I'll try and answer them then. And if you're having any trouble hearing me, hopefully just double check that your speakers are on. They might not be switched on. Okay, so I guess I just wanted to nip this one in the bud before we start out this morning. I often hear people asking if social media is really all that important for their business. And I think the reason that people sort of ask that question is because sometimes it seems like, it's a bit fluffy, it's a bit intangible, and people wonder, does it really actually have any tangible benefit for my business? How is it actually going to help me? So my answer to that question is absolutely. If you run a salon or a spa or a barber shop, you absolutely need a social media presence for your business. So the reason that I'm super passionate about that is because it's really the perfect starting point for anybody who's in our industry. It's free for starters, which is amazing. Like, it's this free marketing tool. It's just waiting for you to use it. And it's a really easy way to start to build a community around your brand. It's also, if you think about it, it's where all of your clients and your potential clients, it's where they're hanging out. It's where they're spending all of their sort of free time, I suppose. If they're in between work meetings or they're, waiting for their kids to pick them up from school, in the ad breaks while they're watching TV, or even, when they're sitting there eating breakfast, they're going to be on social media, which makes it a really, really important marketing platform for you and your business. So I'm going to start out today with some of the basics around branding, because before we can go next level, it's really important to start with the essentials. So chances are, you've probably had a social media account or two for quite a while now. But if they're not really achieving what you need them to achieve, I think it's always a really, really good idea just to take a step back, assess, and have a look at, why it's not working for you, and why that might be the case. Because at the end of the day, social media, like, it's a fun thing, but it is so much more than a pretty place to, play around and, be entertained by. As fun as it is, it has to be a powerful tool for your business. So the starting point of any kind of marketing activities, and that doesn't have to be social media, it could be, anything that you do, is really, it's understanding who you are as a brand. Now, this is something that my colleague Caitlin touched on in last month's webinar. So if you haven't checked that one out already, I really encourage you to do so. This rainbow colored diagram here represents something called brand archetypes, which, it probably sounds a bit fancy, but it's really just a way of talking about and defining your brand's personality. So really, I can't overemphasize this enough, which is why I'm doubling up a bit here and talking about this again today. Defining your brand persona, it's so important. It is probably the single most important thing for brand building. And personally, and it might be because I'm a marketing manager, but I find it really fun as well. It's a good little activity to do, to sort of get to the heart of you, who you are and what you stand for. And I guess, what's your truth? What is your brand's truth? So yeah, if you haven't already done that, just go back and spend some time figuring out your brand archetype. I think you'll find it super beneficial, and it has huge implications for your social media. Okay, so today, I guess just for the sake of running with an example, I'm going to use the example of the creator. I think this is an archetype or persona that is quite relevant in our industry, and hopefully it's quite relevant for many of you who are watching today. So I guess, how do you know if the creator type is you? It's probably because you're quite a creative type. Obviously, you're probably highly imaginative, maybe a bit of a dreamer. You're always dreaming up, new ideas, new ways of working, and you're bursting with enthusiasm to see those ideas through. Um, Chances are you could also be a bit of a non-conformist. You might like to push the boundaries a little and question authority and question, I guess, the status quo. Um, so if you are the creator type, what this means for your customers is you're here to help them express who they are. You're here to help them help them imagine the possibilities for themselves, which I think in our industry, that's really about transforming the way they see themselves. So yeah, really, if you're the creator, then you're all about creativity and big dreams. But if this isn't your persona, if that's not a good fit for you, definitely go back and do the activity in Caitlin's webinar to really hone in on who you are as a brand. Okay, so now that you know who it is that you are, you also need to understand your clients really well. Because as much as social media is all about, it's all about selfies and things like that, but it's not really, at the end of the day, your social media account, your business account, it's not all about you, it's about your clients. So again, I'm not going to go into loads of detail because this is something that Caitlin talked about in her webinar last month, but I'm just going to say that you need to know every little detail about what your ideal customer looks like. I've got a little list here, what keeps them up at night, what's their dog's name, things like that. Honestly, no detail is too small, and that will really help you build that connection with them. Okay, so I think during this process, one thing that you'll probably notice is that your clients have some shared values with your brand archetype. So they may have the exact same archetype. They might be the creator as well, or they might sort of fall in a similar area on this, I guess, color wheel of archetypes. So I think that's really important, and I think this statistic sort of illustrates that. So there, 64% of people say that shared values is the main reason they have a relationship with a brand. Now, I think that's really telling, don't you? I guess at the end of the day, if you can't articulate your values in a way that builds that connection, you're going to have a hard time, I guess, making your social media succeed. Okay, so the third thing that you really need to understand before you sort of start out with your social strategy is who it is you're up against. Unfortunately for all of us, your business doesn't operate. It doesn't just operate in a bubble of its own. There are heaps of other businesses out there who are vying for your clients' dollars at the end of the day. So what I would like you to think about right now is, I guess, your top three competitors, and have a think about where they sit on this sort of spectrum of brand archetypes. Now, one of the things that I think that's important to think about here is, anyone that clashes with you. So if you find that you and all of your competitors are all the creator, then it might be actually a good idea to assess whether moving towards, say, a different archetype would be a good way to differentiate yourself from them. So I guess, for example, if you're a high-end salon and there's 3 other high-end salons in your suburb, and if you're all that creator archetype, that's going to be a problem, isn't it? So, if that was the case, you could think about, I guess, repositioning your brand slightly. You could move towards the lover or maybe the caregiver type archetypes. And that's a good way to, help yourself stand out and attract more clients. Okay, so now that you know yourself, your clients, and your competition, and I really do encourage you to go back and spend a bit of time on that, start to think about your actual social media strategy. So at this point, goal setting is really, really important. And there's no point in starting out with something vague like, oh, I just want to have a social media account because I think it might be good for my business. What I think you should do at this point, I guess, is put together some SMART goals. Now, if you haven't already used SMART goals before, if you're not too familiar with them, check it out. I'll include a bit of a link at the end of this webinar so you can explore that. But at the end of the day, it just means they need to be specific and measurable, achievable, realistic, and targeted is what SMART stands for. So basically, I guess your goals would probably be something along the lines of, achieving an engagement rate of X% each month, and attracting X number of bookings from social media each month. And those sort of things will depend on where you are at the moment. But I guess to fill in those blanks, those X's, I personally would go for something big, hairy, and audacious, a lot like this guy who I really love. So your big, hairy, audacious goal, I mean, it's basically your stretch target. If you fulfilled all of your dreams, what do you think you could achieve if all the stars aligned, and everything just went amazingly and you just absolutely smashed it out of the water? So sure, you might not have much an idea yet about, what's actually possible, but there's certainly no harm in dreaming big, and I encourage you to. Okay, so the next step, and this is something I hear a lot of people ask, is which social media is going to be right for me? I guess there's a lot out there, isn't there? And what I see some people do is, I guess, trying every single last one of them, which, as a business owner, no one's got time for that. It's going to mean if you go down that path, you're going to start to feel very overwhelmed very quickly. And you're going to be spread so thin that you can't really make a real impact across any of those channels. The other thing that I see happen quite a bit as well is, indecision about, where do I even start? Which channel do I pick? It can stop people from getting started in the first place. And that's not what we want. We want to get you guys started. So at the end of the day, though, I guess choosing which social media channel to use, which one's right for your business, shouldn't really be too much of a head scratcher. It should be a fairly easy decision. And my biggest piece of advice is just this: just go where your clients are. Find them and, they'll find you. So I guess just as an example, if you are a mobile masseuse, and you're out there sort of visiting people in their office all day, every day, then your clients are probably going to be on Facebook and LinkedIn is probably a good starting point. But for you guys, if you're a creator type, if that's your brand archetype, that probably means you're either, say, a makeup artist, a barber, or a hairdresser. In which case it's kind of a no-brainer, really. The bulk of your clients they're almost certainly going to be on Instagram. So that's why today, that's going to be the focus of what I go into, about how you can make your Instagram account really perform for your business. Okay, so I say it all the time to my team, content is king. You've probably heard marketers say that before. But honestly, these days, content really is everything. But for somebody who hasn't done it before, or if you're sort of, just starting out, it is hard to sort of know, I guess, what approach to take. So my number one piece of advice about posting on social media content is this: you need to come across as human as possible. And to do that, you need to draw on all that work you've done earlier, on your brand archetype and things like that. And you need to make sure that that persona is reflected in every single thing that you post. If you're not being true to yourself or true to your persona, just don't do it. Don't go there. And that's just, I just can't, it's just so important, because if you're not being authentic, people just aren't going to connect with your content. I guess consumers these days have gotten pretty savvy when it comes to, I guess, spotting a fake. They can spot a fake a mile off, really. So yeah, it's super important to make sure that you're being genuine. I love this statistic. I think it really just sort of, I guess, hits that point home a little bit. So 80% of consumers say that authenticity is the number one thing that makes them decide whether to follow a brand. So that's a pretty out there figure, I think. So that just highlights the importance of authentic content. Okay, so honestly, you guys are actually really lucky. There is so much that you can be posting. With all of the gorgeous work that you do, your Insta feed, it should just be chock full of amazing photos and things like that. So I've just got a few ideas here. But yeah, in the hair and beauty industry, because everything we do is just so creative and visual, the possibilities, they're endless. Like, you guys, we're spoiled for choice. It's amazing. Um, but one thing that I am going to say is when you're creating a little plan of what it is that you want to be posting, just make sure that you are posting every day. Instagram's algorithm is going to love you if you're posting daily. You'll find that you get more reach, more engagement, and at the end of the day, you're going to get better results from your social media. Okay, I hear you. You're run off your feet. You've barely got a free moment to have a cup of coffee, let alone do all this social media stuff. Um, but I do believe that if you're doing it right, social media shouldn't really eat too much into your time. Um, so my biggest piece of advice is, I guess, prepping it all in one hit. If you have Mondays off out of the salon, then just spend an hour or two every Monday just getting everything set up for the week. You don't have to spend ages on it, but if you do just take that little bit of time out, it'll make it so much more manageable rather than, I guess, trying to do it every single day and stay on top of things every single day. Um, so I guess during the week, you obviously need your team to sort of help you out with that. So make sure they're taking, photos of all of their work, before and after shots, photos of clients and things like that. Um, and I definitely recommend investing in a ring light if you haven't already got one, because that will guarantee you some nice Insta-worthy shots. Um, some other ideas, I guess, for generating content is following your top clients' Instagram accounts, and you can share their selfies. People tend to take some really beautiful selfies these days, so you might as well take advantage of that. There's an app you can use. It's called Repost, which I'll put a link to that at the end of this webinar as well. But yeah, use Repost to share their posts. And finally, I guess you can always look to other brands and share their content if you're feeling really, really stuck and if, it's just been too busy a week, you've got nothing to share. I guess the trick with this is, you have to pick and choose a little bit. You can't just share content from anywhere. You've got to make sure that people whose content you're sharing, that their brand values are going to align with your own. Otherwise, it could dilute or devalue your own brand. And of course, if you are resharing other people's content, be a good social media citizen and make sure you credit their work by just giving them a quick tag in the caption. Okay, so one super important thing I would really suggest focusing on when you're planning out all of this content that you've now got ready to go is just making sure that it's really, really consistent looking. So I'm sure you followed, I'm sure you follow quite a few great Instagram accounts. And sort of one of the things that makes an Instagram account stand out is that visual consistency. It's that common thread that ties everything together into one beautiful, cohesive whole. So you can achieve this by being really selective about that content that you choose and just making sure that everything works well together. So this little details, which images that you're going to choose, what colors are in those pictures, and even things like, this might sound a bit crazy, but what filter are you using? All of those sort of considerations really, that will help to start give you a cohesive feel. So I quite like this image on the right here. I think it looks really beautiful. And I think this is a really good it gives you a good insight into how they've achieved this sort of cohesive look. Now, obviously, you don't need to plan it out in quite this way. This is quite detailed, obviously. But I guess this is just a bit of a prompt to help you start thinking about, what content you're going to share and what your Instagram feed is going to look like. Okay, so now that you've created all your content, guess what? You know what I said before about being a human and not a robot? Well, this is probably going to sound like a little bit of a contradiction, but it's actually time now to start embracing technology and automate things. So that means, I guess, scheduling ahead of time the content that you're going to put out there. And there is heaps of amazing apps out there which will help you do that. My personal favorite is one called Plan. And that's because you can see here it gives you a visual guide on, what all of your different posts are going to look like together, and you can plan it out ahead of time. And then, just rather than, having to muck around with posting stuff every day, it prompts you, it does that automatically for you. So yeah, Plan is my favorite. I highly recommend checking it out. And there's a few other cool features in there which I like too. Like it's got a hashtag manager and, competitor insights and things like that. So yeah, you should really start using, I guess, additional technology to help you get a better social media presence. Okay, so I want to talk a bit about influencers now. So we all know what an influencer is, but how do you go about using one to help you grow your business? Now, I think that influencers in the hair and beauty industry it's an absolute match made in heaven. Honestly, it's like we're made for each other. It's brilliant, and I think it's because a lot of what we create is so visual, and a lot of the work that you guys do is so visual. So it's so shareable, which makes it perfect for influencers. Um, so I think, influencers, they are one of the best ways to reach more clients, is to find one who's really relevant to your particular business. And, what they'll do is they'll work like an amplifier that's plugged into your stereo. So they will help your message reach your audience loud and clear, and hopefully more of your audience as well. So I guess these days, there's a lot of people out there who call themselves an influencer. So personally, if I were you, I would be looking out for a few things to start off with. So I guess the number one thing is just check out that they actually have a legitimately sizable following, and you can, unfortunately, some people do purchase followers. So I would just check out what their engagement is like as well. I think that's quite important. Um, you should also make sure that their values align with yours. So those ones we talked about earlier with your brand archetype, and they should also share a similar target audience and target market geographically. So you might be based in Sydney, but if you choose an influencer who's based in Melbourne, it's probably not going to get the results you want. So they're the main things I'd think about when choosing an influencer. Um, So now you've got your social media all set up and running. How can you really start making sure that you're kicking those big, hairy, audacious goals from earlier? So everything that we've talked about so far is going to be a huge help. But there are two things that I would love you to focus on now, which these are the two things that are going to actually take things next level for you. And they're going to help you get some really, really tangible results from your social media. So the first thing that I would definitely be trying out if I were you is Instagram ads. They're just a really, really cost-effective way of building your audience, and increasing your engagement, and even increasing the number of bookings that you get via your Instagram account. The thing that is really, really powerful about Instagram ads is how targeted they can be. So you can really narrow down your audience and make it super specific, and then only the right people are going to see it. So you're not wasting heaps of money by putting out a print ad that is going to go to half of the city, where you only want to be targeting a really specific audience base. So the things that you can target on with Instagram ads is age, gender, where they live, and even things as specific as their unique interests and things. And that's only scratching the surface. You can get so specific with this, and it is super, super powerful. So I would definitely be doing that. Um, it might sound a little bit scary, but honestly, it is a lot easier than you think it might be to get that set up. You can always call in help from the experts. There's heaps of agencies around that offer that sort of thing. But honestly, I'd give it a go yourself, and I think you'll be really, really surprised about how easy it can be to start to reap some tangible results from that. Okay, so the second thing that is going to take you next level, and honestly, if you're not doing this already, just seriously do this straight after the webinar, otherwise you're totally missing out, is putting online booking buttons on your social media. It might sound so basic, so simple, and it kind of is. Like, it's really easy. Just jump in there. I'll include some instructions at the end of this webinar, but it's all on our help center on our website. It's so simple to do. You can do it on your Facebook and your Instagram, and it really is the best way to drive physical bookings from your social media accounts. So yeah, if you haven't already done it, please do it today. You'll get results straight away, I promise. Okay, so here's the clincher. So now you've got everything all sorted, it's all up and running, you've got your online booking buttons up, everything is working smoothly. How do you actually know what is working and what's not? I have to admit, I'm a complete nerd when it comes to stuff like this. I could spend all day, every day, delving into all the facts and figures and the number crunching and analysis and things like that. But if you're not quite as into all that stuff as I am, I just want to reassure you that everything you'll ever need to know is probably already there for you. It's hiding under the covers. You just need to take a look. It really depends what scheduling app you're using, and whether or not you have an Instagram business account. With a scheduling app like Plan, you'll be able to see what kind of engagement you're getting, and even compare it to the competition and things like that. There's so many insights that are built into scheduling apps. And if you've got an Instagram business account, there's an absolute wealth of inbuilt analytics built into that. If you don't have an Instagram business account, you can actually just swap it over for free. So you can turn your normal Instagram account into an Instagram business account, and that will give you all of those analytics and things. Again, I love how much is in that. But if you're sort of just trying to wrap your head around the basics, if I were you, the things that I would be really paying extra attention to are things like followers in your local area is quite an important one, because you can have a massive fan base, which is great, but if they're all based in, say, LA or New York, that's awesome, because there's people globally loving you, but it's probably not going to translate into actual tangible results for your business. The other thing that I would definitely monitor and follow and definitely engage in as well is the comments. So what conversation is actually happening about your brand? Are the majority of your comments, from customers? Are they from people who are not your customers? Is it positive engagement? Is it maybe not so positive? Is most of the comments that you get just generated by those sort of automatic bots and things that people seem to be using a lot of lately? Like, definitely use your comments to get a gauge on what the sentiment is like out there about your brand, and always, always, always comment back. The other thing that I would also keep an eye on is, what kind of posts are getting the most engagement. So is it that your images are getting heaps? Is video working better for you? Are there particular hashtags that you've been using that are sort of, getting heaps of reach and lots of comments and things like that? And yeah, I think that's really important. And finally, I guess the other thing that you want to do is, whenever you get a new client through the door, just ask them, how did you hear about us? And that is another really good way to gauge whether your social media is working for you or not. So I guess with all that in mind, that's the starting point. That's the springboard for your success. From here, you can really start to use that analytics to hone your approach and improve as you go. And with every single post, you'll get one step closer to achieving that big, hairy, audacious goal that we started out with today. Okay, so that's it, guys. Thanks so much for joining me today. I'm just going to open it up for questions now. So if you have a question, there should be a little arrow on the right-hand side of your screen. So just click on that, and then you'll see a little grey box that says questions in the heading. Just click on that and fire away with your questions. I'd love to hear them. Okay, so I can see that somebody's typing. Okay. Cool. So Dale would like to know, I guess, the general approach for using hashtags and things like that. That's a really good question, Dale, because there are a lot of conflicting opinions on that. And if you do a bit of Googling, you'll probably uncover all of them. Basically, a hashtag is what you use to get your post seen and discovered by people who aren't already following you. And the train of thought on how many and things like that changes. That changes as fast as the algorithm changes, basically. So Instagram update that all the time. So really, I've just found that the best way to get it right is through trial and error. You can use up to 30 hashtags, but it's really about choosing the right ones to make an impact on whether or not your posts are getting seen. So I guess, yeah, I think if you're, I would try and use niche hashtags. So for example, if you're using just, hashtag like Insta hair or something like that, your post is going to be a drop in the ocean of, yeah, there's going to be millions of posts out there on that day with that same hashtag. So I would try and find some more niche ones that speak to your specific community. And that's going to be different for every single business based on, what's going on in your local area, anything that you can do to narrow that down a bit and speak to somebody specific. If you can do that, then I definitely encourage doing that. Okay. Now, there is one more question here from Alison. She's wondering about Instagram stories and how to use them. That's another really good question. Personally, I love Instagram stories. I think they're heaps of fun. And the reason for that is, you don't have to overthink them quite as much as, what's going into your feed. They're not quite as heavily curated. So they're really, really great for just your day-to-day general stuff. Not to mention the fact, I think the current stat is there's 200 million people using them every day, which is pretty huge. So I guess the best approach for your Instagram stories is, I guess it's similar to what you're posting on your feed. So just tagging people, using hashtags and things like that. And I think that's the best way to guarantee that they're going to help expand your reach and get you more results. Okay, now I'm just going to double check that there's no more questions. I can't see any. Yeah, if you wanted to find out more about any of what I've talked about today, and I realize that it has been quite high level, I could talk about this stuff for weeks, really. But we love a good chat here at Shortcuts, especially when it comes to growing your business. So send through your questions and comments to these 2 email addresses here, or give us a call. And yeah, we'd love to help you out. Okay, so thank you again for joining me. I've had a great time this morning, and I hope you have too. You'll see here that I've included just some extra bits and pieces that you might find of use. I will circulate these to everybody who's attended. And thank you so much again. And I hope to chat again soon. See ya.